Hello and welcome back to the Mid-Am Podcast. We are your hosts. My name is Tyler Munns, and on the other side of the screen from me is my good friend Nathan Furumasu.
Howdy.
And tonight we're nerding out. We're getting real nerdy.
Getting our geek on.
Getting the geek on. Nathan texted me and said, "Hey man, like I was playing around with some ideas on the range, and I've fallen down a wormhole of nerdery, and I need a platform to talk through my feels." So I said,
That's right.
I know just the place. So
this is a safe space.
It really is. It really is. But before we jump into what is it? Music Science Theater 3000 or whatever. Mystery Science Theater. Thank you. I'd like to we'd like to say a special thank you to the sponsor of the Mid-Am Podcast, the fine folks at Adele.
Hello.
Golf. Man, just again, the irons.
They're too good.
Wedges. I played yesterday at I played yesterday at Royal Oaks. Sick track, by the way. Way to go, Vancouver. And I was playing with a couple of the guys, and they're like, checking out the irons, and they're like, dude, these are incredible. I didn't even know these guys made irons. I was like, what do you think they make?
That's what they started with.
I was like, that's their core competency. That's their bread and butter. And he's like, these look sick. These look amazing. When I was out playing with Sam down in Eugene, he hit some. He's like, well, looks like I'm going to be ordering a new set of irons. It's just like anyone who touches them, every shot sounds flushed. They look really good. They perform very well. The movable weights really do make a huge difference when we're talking about trying to dial in center strike, or providing a little bit of extra forgiveness on some of, if you have a tendency, like I have a toe ball tendency. So I threw threw the weights in the toes, and when those toe balls come up, ball gets there. So,
this should be no surprise. I mean, movable weight technology has been in the driver in the woods for a decade or more now,
20 years.
And we know it works. Otherwise, big brands would have abandoned it long ago. For some reason, people haven't been doing it to the irons. They just slap lead tape on. And, here we are, Adele,
they're not reinventing the wheel.
Really
they're just
doing anything amazing, but they're the only ones doing it, and they do a good job of it. And, it works.
It works really, really well. So yeah, be sure to check them out. You can find out more about their irons, their wedges, their new lineup of array putters on Adele Golf at adelegolf.com. That's EDELGOLF.com. So again, thank you so much to the folks at Adele.
Hello.
All right, Nathan. Let's hear it, man. Let's hear it.
All right. Put on your swimsuits. We're diving in. We're diving in.
Bend.
So, this, we're labeling this our we're going to get nerdy episode, but this is really just my life. I live in this space. So you're all getting a welcome invitation, a warm embrace to what happens in my brain, most of the weeks, that I'm alive. So let's see. Most of this is born out of my rant from last week's chop sesh and my, decision to start Hot Driver Summer and pursue improvement with that club. And, it also, the reason why I needed to verbally process this and kind of talk it all out is because the more I started thinking about it, the more I'm like, oh, well, that includes this stuff that I've been working on with my coach, Matt. That includes this stuff that I've heard before. That includes this stuff that I know is true, based off of whatever gears or force plates or all this factual things that we know.
Yeah, so this little pebble of an idea hits your windshield, and it's just like spider webbing into a situation. Yeah.
So it started out with Hot Driver Summer. I dialed it back with the driver. Started out just chipping them. Then I worked up to, I was saying 75% swings.
which looks like
focusing on
110.
focusing on contact, and it looks like 110. It looks like I'm still moving it
Yeah.
very quickly. When I went out and played 9, I was hitting it just as far. Like I hit one like 290 on the fly. That's probably further than I've been hitting it recently. So,
Pretty far.
and it felt like I was like cruise control. I was just trying to smoothie and out there. And I think this is not, unique to me. Everybody knows like, oh man, I was just trying to swing easy on that one and I flushed it. And oftentimes less effort produces that better contact and more speed. And then those things translate to more distance. Even when you feel like you're swinging less. And that's kind of a big point here that we'll get to. So I recently watched a video that Brennan from Be Better Golf put out. Shout out, Brennan. I'd love to have you on the channel sometime. Or whatever podcast, whatever we do.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Because I feel like we could talk for a long time. But he was talking mostly about this physicist, Dr. Robert Grover, and he was mentioning some aspects of something called resonance. Yes. And so then I went obviously from there and was like, well, I need to actually watch the entire 40-minute lecture that Dr. Robert Grover gave that he was referencing. It's on YouTube. Check it out. It's really
Yale
cool.
Guy, real smart.
Yeah. Used to teach at Yale. Made a swing training aid that you can't get anymore. I have
might be part of the Illuminati. We're not sure.
Who knows? But real smart either way. And he's talking about this principle in physics, mathematics, whatever, called resonance. And essentially, we all know Newton's laws of like object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by another force. Sure. Resonance is kind of an addendum to that, as I am understanding it, where an object in motion will also find the most efficient path for that motion. Okay. And so he relates everything to the golf swing because he loves golf. And so this is just what he's studied. So this whole time through this lecture, he's got this golf club that he's kind of just penduluming back and forth. And he's saying, like, look, I'm holding onto this with 2 fingers. It's going back and forth. I'm doing very little to manipulate it. It finds its most speed at the bottom of the arc, slows down naturally, transitions, and comes back the other way. He's like, this is something that we call resonance, that there is a relationship between how much force happens to move an implement one direction and then also how much force is required to move it back into the other direction. And he said it's, this happens throughout nature in any in many places, systems where movement and forces take place, golf swing included. So it happens in this 1-to-2 ratio, essentially, like 1 part amount of force going back takes double that amount of force to swing it back in the other direction. And they've studied lots of really good swings, professionals, elite amateurs. I don't have the list, but he did a lot of work with like the Yale golf team and stuff like that. And he said, we found that the best ball strikers meet this, essentially the 1-to-2 ratio, based off of their measurements of like they were measuring how much force was put in, these players were putting into their backswing and how much force they were putting into their downswing. So that's cool. Brennan takes that in one direction with the video, and he links back to some videos he actually made like 3 years ago after when he first was talking about resonance and Dr. Grover. And he has some videos of him doing like fitness training and stuff where he's got this one of those sticks with the big long ropes and he's trying to do like move it, 6 paces this way and 12 paces that way. And so he's trying to essentially put in the amount of forces that represent that ratio of resonance. It's finding the most efficient path for the club to travel on, how much force needs to be put onto into the golf club and certain types of tempo and rhythm to create these like elite tempo rhythms and efficiency. That's kind of where this all falls back to, is efficiency. I had a thought that I think Brennan was missing one maybe step in logic here, because resonance, we know this is factual, so we don't have to argue
Yeah.
about this. Don't
Yeah.
at
This is
me.
not an opinion.
Yeah,
This is,
yeah.
yeah. This is
So the resonance,
us observing. Yeah.
the resonance occurs in this 1-to-2 ratio. However, my thought was, what is the perceived effort though? Okay? Because if I feel like I'm putting one part back and two parts through, am I actually achieving that? And I really doubt that's the case.
No.
We talked with Drew Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
who hits the
Hits it
ball
far.
a little
Yeah.
ways.
Real far.
And we asked him what the biggest misconception about speed was, and he said that more efforts equals more speed is the biggest misconception. People think that they need to apply force or
Yes.
try and swing it fast to create speed, and that's just wrong. There are numerous pros, notably Tommy Fleetwood, I've heard saying, like, I take it back this way and then I just try and let it fall.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not adding anything to the downswing. He's just letting gravity, whatever, do its thing. So that got me thinking, okay, let's do some like sloppy equations. If, say, I put 1,000 newtons of force into my backswing, right? That means the downswing is going to be ideally 2,000 newtons of force.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. That's the 1-to-2 ratio. However, back to one of Newton's other law, the object in motion stays in motion until it's acted upon by another force. You can take it back and swing it back, and eventually it'll just stop on its own. I don't have to try and stop this thing. Eventually it'll reach a point where it stops. Do you know why? Gravity, for one.
Okay.
2, because you're exerting a certain amount of force up onto the golf club, and it's going to swing up as far as it will, and if you did nothing else, gravity would eventually slow that down. Secondly, your mass, your body mass, and also the tensile and elastic properties of your anatomy. So your tissues, like your bone structure,
biological,
anatomical,
like restriction or anatomical
your
restriction.
joints only move so far. The joint capsule will stretch a little bit, and that's it. Tendons can stretch, but not too far. Muscles stretch, ligaments stretch. Everything has some amount of give to it, and it also has some amount of elasticity to it, to where it will recoil. So you, where was I going? So you place 1,000 newtons of force back into the club, and eventually gravity, your body mass, and the properties of your anatomy itself will exert an equal amount of force, because it will stop the club, right? It has to be an equal amount of force, otherwise the club would continue to, it would continue to keep moving. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're already 1-to-1 just by letting the club naturally find its end of the backswing based on how much force you put into the swing backward. Okay.
Yes.
So then, how much perceived effort does it take to double that amount of force on the way down?
Well, I mean, it'd be almost nothing.
Exactly. That's what my contention is because, one, gravity is still going to continue to act upon the golf club once it stops and overwhelm that amount of force. 2, all of those tissues, it's been studied in many journal articles that I've read, have elastic and energy storage capacity, meaning when there's force put into them, they can store some of that force like a rubber band or like a spring, and they will recoil naturally. You don't have to do anything for it. It's free power, right? So if you swing the club back and it stretches out all your tissues, they're going to recoil and apply even more force than just their stoppage force on the way back down. So
potential energy into kinetic energy.
Exactly. So without doing anything, just swinging a club back, letting it naturally stop based on how much force you swung it back with, and then letting it fall back down to earth, perceiving maybe no extra force, you're probably much closer to a 2-to-1 ratio.
I see.
So
how do you swing faster? It sounds like
you put more force into the backswing.
The backswing.
And
Okay.
you swing it either faster back and hitting those end ranges of your anatomy sooner and with more force into those end ranges, or bigger, because then the
Yeah.
club would essentially
Travel
be
farther.
falling
Yeah.
for longer and travel for longer. I mean, it's not going to reach terminal velocity, right? It's not falling for that far, but so
No.
it should consistently be speeding up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my thought was, therefore, to achieve this resonant force on the club, this 2-to-1 or 1-to-2 ratio, the perceived effort that you as the golfer will feel is I put 80% in and 0, or 100% in and 0.
0. Yeah.
I do
Well,
nothing on the downswing. Nothing.
well, yeah, and that's I love that explanation because so my brain is spiderwebbing right now
Yeah.
to a bunch of things that I've heard where it's like, you ask any really great ball striker, long driver, like where does the backswing end? Almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Almost immediately. It's like
Yeah.
their backswing ends as soon as their hands
Yeah.
are at about their hips because they've exerted almost all of the energy that they're going to exert. And then it's just you like you said, gravity and your anatomical restrictors are stopping that club. And because you've put so much force into it, your body knows that it kind of has to put the brakes on up there, or it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to, so you don't like tear, your labrum.
Yeah.
And so that triggers you into this downswing sequence. And then
Mm-hmm.
at that point, everything's happening so fast, you can't
Yeah.
voluntarily contract muscles to try to swing harder or exert more force. It's like it's over once you've put enough force back there, it's over.
Yeah.
And now you're just along for the ride. And that's where that, I think, yeah, like this idea of like, oh, there's that smooth effortless power. It's like, no, the effort was just so soon,
It's just
and
earlier.
it's just so early.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've learned over the last like 2 years of really like studying the golf swing is like everything happens so much earlier than we think it does.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that explanation, like using that math to kind of like communicate this feel of, okay, well, I'm putting all this back here, and then I'm just kind of letting everything else happen as a consequence of
Yeah.
this very this very deliberate intent to create like force.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think I've heard Drew say that like his backswing is over. At least he feels like his backswing is over at like P2.
Yeah.
So it's like
So
club
early.
at first parallel. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm done then. I'm going forward already.
Right.
But he's put so much force into it from 1 to 2 that it's going to keep going back. And his body's trying to stop it
Yeah,
and
he
exert this
has to
mass
go
onto it. Right.
because so much force is
Yeah.
going backwards. He has to do everything in his power
Right.
to stop that club and get it going the other way.
And he can, and most of us, because of our mass in relation to the golf club's mass, probably just need to kind of like sit a little.
Mm-hmm.
And that's enough to eventually put the brakes on, which, hey, guess what? That's like downshift boards, step drills, pressure forward. That's
Scooby, shallowing,
everything
blah, blah, blah.
you
Yeah.
need to do. And like, also to your point, like you just said, like if it happens so fast, it's done with your brain signaling is not fast enough to have a downswing swing thought. You can't. If you do, you're late. It doesn't matter. No matter what happens, like something's already happened.
Doing it
you're going to be
wrong.
late, and then you're saving impact, you're compensating, whatever. So I went to the range with this, just like after being like, oh, I need to like experiment with this and play with this and feel it. And it was cool. Like it took me, and obviously I've been to the range one time. Like I haven't figured this out by any means, but I was focusing on just literally like P1 to P2 or maybe what was it, 3 left arm parallel.
Yeah.
And just like how much force I was putting back into it there, and then feeling like I decelerated and just let it, let it fall, do nothing with it. And man, I didn't lose any distance, nothing. And on top of that, I'm starting to think too that a sensation of 0% effort forward or through into the downswing. Like you're not putting any muscular force or effort to propel the club, means that all of your attention and your awareness can be in face manipulation
Yeah.
and potentially path as well. But I think that's probably more determined by how you take it back. So all of a sudden, where did I had notes here. I've got a page of
It's a beautiful mind over there.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, this, if there's no sensation in the arms, then to feel like they're adding force, this is the whole crop of people who are like, oh, just turn the arms off, passive arms, right? The arms are still going to drop. They're still going to physically lower. We know that. We've seen it on gears. But the problem with all of these people is like, okay, this is what happens. We're taught like this is what happens. You know, the arms go up, oh, they feel like they're relaxed, and then you get the gears and 3D group of people who are like, no, they drop. They physically move. Look, we've measured it. It's like, cool, okay, but what does the golfer feel?
Yeah.
It's like
What's happening in the
probably
brain?
they're feeling nothing. Their arms are falling in relation to gravity and their anatomy. But then that's how people are allowed to do that. And then the motion is going to happen independently of effort and is a direct result of our anatomy and the mass of the body just resisting the initial force of the backswing, right?
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden these wrist motions that people say to do, or like face manipulation, becomes a whole lot easier because your muscles aren't working to release and fire and fling out this club head. They can just kind of fine tune it as it's just kind of
Yeah. So like,
falling
hey,
down.
here's how I have to square the face up. You know, my body kind of
Yeah.
knows what's happening because it has a decent spatial awarenness.
Yeah.
So it has in the more longer you play, the better like your body understands where the face is. That's why like shaft fitting, and I'm dealing with issues right now where I
Sure.
don't think my shafts are stiff enough. Giggity, is that,
Big,
that
strong boy.
Hey, strong boy, is that, you know, like face awareness that's ball striking. It's at a certain
Yeah.
point, if you can kind of get the motion right and your balance is fine and your low point, you have decent low point control,
Yeah.
then it's all about, it's all about knowing where the face is during every
Yeah.
part of the swing. And yeah, I like this idea of like, well, if you turn off all of these kind of big muscles, or it's not that you're turning them off, it's that you are de-emphasizing like a conscious awareness of them
Mm-hmm.
in, in lieu of that, you're saying, okay, I'm going to think about my wrist conditions because
Yeah.
that directly impacts the direction the face is at impact.
Yeah. So I think with this, honestly, you can probably put on more speed than if you were trying to physically forcefully add speed in the downswing.
Oh, 100%.
And also because if, again, your brain can't think fast enough to control your body fast enough, if you have any inclination to move forward, whether that's pressure shift, whether that's lateral, whether that's verticals, whether that's I'm trying to, get my tilts going, get my slingshot gang, whatever, all these different hot things. If you have any forceful, active intent forward, you're not going to be able to break in time like all the long hitters say you should be doing, right? Because your breaking will be too late.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
can't break
Oh,
in
I
time,
see what you're saying.
you'll never release, right?
So if you're saying if you are consciously being like, okay, now I got to go forward, you're
Mm-hmm.
too late.
Yeah. Or you probably will do that, but you'll probably end up just moving forward through the entire strike.
Yeah.
Right? You'll never break your hips. You'll never post up on the left side. You'll never, get that forward target ways and then backward force pressure that we all want in the lead foot. Like none of that stuff will happen. You'll never stop and let the club sling past you and release because you can't do that fast enough if you have an intent to move forward or to rotate through.
So it's like, it's almost like you have to trust that the mechanisms that you use to break at the top which
Yeah.
is that first little, basically it's that forward bump, right? It's or that
Yeah.
little drop you're talking
Yeah.
about. I mean, that's really what it is. It's
Yeah.
you get to P2, and then from there you are just doing everything you can to stop this club from going backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've stopped it, now you're trying to do everything you can. You should be
Yeah.
trying to do everything you can to go the other way,
Yeah.
to now break on the other side,
Yeah.
to let this club pendulum
Which,
down.
which, back to the theory of resonance, by putting in this braking force at the top to stop it and get the club moving in the other direction, you've already sufficiently powered it at that point to move past you. So you don't need to add anything to it. You're kind of just stop everything and just kind of let it fall. And it's going to sound like casting, or going to sound like deceleration, or like reverse pivot and stuff like that. But that's not what's going to happen. It's the weirdest thing.
No.
And it's not what we see on long hitters and all the force plates and, 3D TrackMan, whatever, what have you. Like they do everything so much earlier than the rest of us, and this is why, because they're not trying to. It just happens because they've done it all back here. So,
Yep.
that's kind of where I was at. I went to the range. I played with this a little bit. I sent you a video because by the end of it, I was kind of feeling myself. Again, I had hit some big old drives, feeling like Kyle Berkshire, like Martin Borgmeyer type effort into the backswing,
Yeah.
which for me obviously didn't look like that. And then trying to feel like nothing on the downswing, and it obviously doesn't end up that way. And I was smoking some drives, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna screw around with this a little bit. And I sent you the video of that pitching wedge I was hitting. So towards the end of my session, I was like, I'm just gonna hit these pitching wedges like this. I'm gonna go, 80% back, not trying to go like full arms high John Daly or whatever. I'm just trying to keep it like, where nice 3/4 plus on the way back. That felt like 60, 70% back, and then 0, and just let it fall, let it release through, manage the face a little bit, I guess. And I was hitting them same distance I always do. I was like, okay, so how far can I do this now? Like, what if I start screwing with how
hard to 11?
How hard I go back? So I started swinging it back about as hard as I could. And this is how I think people should train with this then, is I started using the tempo tones, tour tempo.
Yes, tour tempo.
We love that.
Big advocates of tour tempo.
Yeah, you've mentioned it a bunch. I love it as well. What I think you do is you get the tones going, and I have my Apple Watch, right? So I just have it start playing on my watch, and you try and swing it back to whatever ratio of tones you're doing, and feel how much effort it takes you to do the first 2 tones.
Yeah.
And then just let it fall and see if it matches the 3rd tone. If it doesn't match the 3rd tone, don't try and go forward faster or rush the transition. Try to go back faster so that it starts matching the tones, right? So I started with that. I think I did 24/8 or whatever at the start, because that's kind of where I normally feel like I do.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, 18/6, here we go. And it took me 4 or 5 balls and 5 or 6 swings in between.
So quick.
And then I started hitting the ball. And I sent you this video of this pitching wedge that went 170 yards, right? And it felt fast to me. It felt crazy. Like, I don't intend to.
It didn't look like out of control.
Yeah, like my transition was way slower than it normally is, or it was cleaner anyway. Usually my problem is I get back up and my transition looks like I'm short arming it and like not finishing my backswing and kind of yanking it down. It didn't look like that. It looked fast, but the whole swing.
It didn't look out of sequence. It didn't look out of sequence.
No. So all of a sudden I was like, holy crap. And I had to obviously validate it. So there's a 160-yard flag, and it's on a green. So I know if I fly the green, it's like 165-ish. And I was hitting them over that and could see it bounce. So I don't really know how far they were, but I'm confident they were at least 170.
With range balls?
Yeah. The one I sent you was actually not the best one. The one before that I didn't catch on film, but that one I actually pured, and it was in the air a long time. And so, that obviously got me super super kind of excited and
Worked
like,
up.
oh,
Yeah.
I need to invest some time in this.
Yeah.
So Hot Driver Summer, all that to say, is paying dividends because it's kind of lit with that plus, YouTube.
Yeah.
Shout out Brennan again. If this
Well,
if this is what starts to really shape some of the changes I've been trying to implement, because also looking at my swing on the video, all of a sudden I'm hitting all these like positions
right.
that I've been looking for that I can do when I'm moving it like super slowly or in my backyard. But now I'm like, oh, I was at a range
At
hitting real
speed.
balls at targets at speed, and it was happening.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened yet. So that was pretty exciting. Thanks to physics.
Physics. Yeah, science.
Science, baby. So if you're still listening,
well, it's cool. It's cool. No, I mean that really matches up to like all the things that I've been saying. Like I've gained a bunch of distance in recent months, and like I attribute everything to tempo. And I think that all marries, like everything that you just talked through, it marries up to this idea of if you can get your sequencing right, which if you're focused on that the tempo aspect of it, like you learn everything has to happen so much quicker. You get to the ball quicker.
Mm-hmm.
That's just more speed. I'm not trying to swing faster.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get my tempo. Like I'm trying to get to my tempo points at the right time.
Yeah.
And as a result, I think just without, subconsciously, without even thinking about it, I'm clearly putting more effort. I mean, you watch videos of me from, February versus videos of me from today, and everyone will say, well, it really looks like your tempo has increased. And it's like, well, I guess so. But I mean, like the ratio hasn't really changed, or it has changed, but probably for the better. It's just tightened up.
Yeah.
But like my force back is just so much greater than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of that, and me trying to naturally stop that club, it's coming through a lot faster as well. And the tour, I'm blanking on the name, but I think his name's John.
John Novosel.
John Novosel. He got on Instagram and was like, commented on my post and was like, 24/8 users often see when they move up to 21/7, they'll see 20 to 40 yard gains. Like he goes, that is fairly common.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I also am an advocate just from more, science, that more speed actually stabilizes the club face or the club head and the plane.
For sure.
So it makes the game easier. That's just how angular velocity, centripetal force, whatever, it works.
If you can allow the mass of the club head to overtake your own strength, so to speak, not really, but like, or at least the active, intention of your body to try to manipulate things through just the speed. Cause the faster it is, the heavier that club head gets, essentially.
Yeah. Well, and I actually made a tool for demonstrating.
I love this
because
it's a reminder that we simulcast these on YouTube.
Exactly. So. Yeah. So if you want to see this, I'm just going to try and not whack my microphone with it or anything else I have around here. But anyway, so I've thought about this for a long time. I used to have a golf ball on the end of a rope, but I just made this because I couldn't find that. But essentially, this is just a washer on the end of a string if you're not going to watch it on YouTube. So if I get this going around me slowly, right, it's really hard if I wanted to try and change, say, like the path of it. Like if I want this going more up and down this way, I can't do it. Or I have to do really big arm motion, a lot of effort. Cool. The bigger the motion of the hand, which in this case, this analogy too would be like bigger motions, more effort of the body, generally translates to slower.
Yeah. Kind of a slow,
centripetal
easy
force, right?
Yeah.
If I want this thing to go faster, all of a sudden I do a lot less.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very, very tight.
Very, very tight, very little. So I'm putting in very little force into the golf club, and I'm just kind of letting the thing move around me. Now, all of a sudden, it's really easy if I just want to kind of change my plane.
Yeah. Look at that. Right? That's a great visual. Watch this on YouTube, folks.
Or what if I want to go What if I want to go that way?
Oh, look.
And
Oh, wow.
down.
You're
Oh,
shallow.
how
Look at
about
that.
that? Look at that. Look at that.
Look at that.
So easy.
Coming from the
Or
inside.
we're coming from the inside. Here, let's go
Now,
over the
now,
top. Want to
now we're
cut?
hitting a little bit of a cut.
There you go.
Little
Cool.
slice.
So all I'm doing, this is why speed makes golf easier. If you can figure out how to essentially not use your body, or to use your body but not muscularly, just as a brace, and get that club head moving around you in all the ways we just talked about, all of a sudden it's so much easier to manage where the club head is, what the club face is doing, I think. So I really want to dive into this as far as just like, I think all not like official speed training should be like all my training, but I honestly think like most golf swing training at this point needs to be, beyond raw beginner, like grip, stance, basic stuff like that, needs to be like step
Rooted.
drills, pressure, needs to be all into basically the backswing. And then from there, it's just skill development. Like, let me just do the drills where I'm making impact in front of a piece of tape on a mat, or let me just, so I'm just dictating where that's ball on a string is hitting the mat.
It's cool that you're saying that, because that like marries up so many of these like kind of instructors in the space that seemingly have differing opinions, but like the way you said that just married up a lot of them. So like AMG, right?
Yeah.
They're one of those guys that say, oh, you got to drop the arms, blah, blah, blah. But they're also ones that say, if you can get the backswing right, it's over. You fixed it. You're done.
It's good.
Right. Talking about,
they also have their surf move that they really like, which is essentially just your body stopping the club from going back anymore. Is that
right? Adam Young talking about just the skills aspect of that, where it's just like, it's really about like, try to hit it on the toe, try to hit it on the heel, try to miss the tape, try to do all these things to get it more athletic. So it's more of a reactionary type thing, so that you're like, and you're not thinking about, oh, okay, I need to be open up 2 degrees and the face needs to be closed 2 degrees to hit this draw. It's like, no, dude, like how like hit the draw, like see the draw and let your body hit the draw.
Yeah.
Like that's a skills thing.
Yeah.
I totally agree that like, yes, I mean, or in even the mock speed system,
Sure.
We listened to him talk. He's like, we don't do, like most of my students, they don't do any sort of technique stuff. It's just all the mock speed. And like all of a sudden their ball striking is just way better, because they've learned how to use their body correctly as like you said, I think that was beautifully said, as a brace.
Yeah.
Using your body as a brace, not as like the engine.
Yeah. And I think too, this brings in something we've talked about before as well, of just like, why are some kids just so natural and like hit all the positions and stuff like that without any golf instruction, right? Because I think probably they're just more naturally swinging something around them in the easiest way possible, because they're not strong enough to manipulate it in any other way.
They don't have the upper body strength.
To resonance is motion created by in the most efficient way, i.e. the easiest manner possible. And therefore they naturally are just only able to guide the club along in a resonant fashion, and therefore, have all these like textbook swings. All they're doing is just swinging stuff around. Brennan made the same point I can't remember if it was this video or another video. He's like, if you want to see it happen, take a stick and go just beat the crap out of
it was the same video,
right? He's like, remove everything from it and just move this stick into this and just beat the crap out of it. All of a sudden you're going to look perfect according to golf textbook stuff. And it's like, so resonance and these efficiencies are natural to systems of movement. It's just that we screw it up with golf instruction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyway,
makes a lot of sense.
Let me step down off my soapbox here, and then you can talk about whatever you want to.
That was fun. No, I dig that. You know what, that's going to make for some good, I think, long form content of us just kind of like getting out there together and figuring that out. Like, and talking through it and playing with it. That's that fun stuff, man. That's where you're like, oh, now let's like it, in the real world application, let's see what happens if we do these things.
Sure.
And by you saying, okay, I did all these things kind of in the small scale. What if I turn this thing up to like a Wyndham Clark level tempo? What happens? It's like, wow, what happens if I hit 180-yard pitching wedges?
Yeah. I mean,
Do I
you
need to hit a 180-yard pitching wedge? No,
no.
but it's cool to be able to do it, you
But
know?
if I have that on the top end, then I can play at a much more controlled, like manageable, consistent spot and still gain yardage than over what I've got, you know?
Right.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, so what I wanted to talk about is like I mentioned at the top of the show, I played out at Royal Oaks in Vancouver, Washington Country Club. Very, very nice track. Have you played out there?
I have not.
Oh, we got
No.
to get you out there. We
I'd
got to
like
get you
to.
out there.
Yeah.
And I played with a gentleman, Will. Last name redacted. I don't know if he wants me to share his information, but
Fair enough.
Will took me out and showed me around. I played with a past Oregon AM champion, was also in our group.
That's cool.
Another guy that's a scratch player, and then another guy who's a 4 like me. And we played the tips, we played the back tees. So my course handicap was an 8.
Ooh,
And
nice.
Feels a little scummy,
Playing
but
some
I
money games.
did take the money. It was also like their men's club day or whatever, like Thursday men's club game. So guests are allowed to play. So I put in for $20. I shot 77. I won a lot of money.
8 strokes.
I won a lot of money. Yeah. Shot a 69. First time ever seeing the course. I mean, people like one of the guys, John, that we were playing with, he goes, genuinely, dude, I've never seen someone first time from the tips play this well. Like unbelievable. Wow. And the reason I bring that up, not to toot my own horn, a little bit, I'm proud of it, but also
toot.
Though the thing that was revelatory for me was I was playing with Will, and Will's a really, really good player. He's a scratch, I think he's a scratch player. And he was showing me around, he's telling me like, hey, here, hit it here, hit it here, hit it here. Yeah. And the first few holes, he would just tell me, he'd tell me the line off the tee, and then he would tell me, okay, here, this is what the green does. He goes, here's where to miss it. And he said, do not go over there, like miss it here. And I go, okay, cool. So I did that. And I kept doing it. And then I would all of a sudden have like these if I didn't hit the green, and I didn't hit a lot. I missed 11 greens. I only hit 7 greens. But my chips and my putts, or, like a putt off the fringe, or the chips from the rough, or even the sand shots, which sand game is a real nightmare for me, but out of, very consistent bunkers, turns out not as hard, not as hard as I thought. But I just was like, kept going, kept playing. And it just like became very apparent. I'm like, I've never looked at a golf course this way. I've never looked at a golf course being like, okay, where is the best place to chip from? Where is the best place for this ball to end up so that I have a pretty decent shot at making par here? And I just kept like, when I'd miss, it was like really not a big deal, not a problem. And it got me thinking like, dude, maybe my short game isn't as bad as I think it is. Maybe I'm just putting myself in like the toughest situations where like my chance of success is so low that like no one, tour level dudes aren't, could rarely pull these types of shots off. You just don't see them doing it very often because they're smart enough to know to not hit it there.
Yeah.
And like, it just felt so like it was so much less stress, so much like less mental effort to get around the golf course, when it was just like, okay, short right is where I need to go. So I'm going to hit a club that, like, if I hit it perfect, it's going to get there. But if it doesn't, it's going to be short. And I'm going to aim at a spot where that, if no matter what happens, if I push draw or go straight, it's going to be kind of right.
Yeah.
And it's like, because I think part of that was like me thinking that that's a bad way to look at anything, because I'm like, oh no, that's pessimistic. Like, you got to play for the pure strike. You got to play with confidence. And it's like, that's not playing with a lack of confidence. That's just playing with an understanding of, where do I want this ball to end up?
Yeah.
Because I want to be able to have a very confident shot on the next one, whether that's a putt or a very straightforward chip that is hard to screw up. And I just like, and I granted, I putted very well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the stats say 27 putts, but
Mm-hmm.
I will say only 3 of those were putts that are like should be less than 50% make putts. It was 1 8-foot putt and 2 10-foot putts. And I had a 5-foot putt and a 6-foot putt, which, should be kind of in that 80% make range
Yeah.
for most people, typically not for me because I'm like very not confident. But I was like, I think so much like stress had been taken away and so much of like my mental energy had like was still remaining around those kind of shorter putts because I wasn't putting myself in these horrible situations that like those even felt easier.
Sure. Yeah.
I wasn't hitting the ball like super, super well. I was hitting the driver okay. But I had like 3 really bad, like left miss drives, like pretty uncharacteristic. I mean, like bad. And then apart from a handful of iron shots, I didn't really hit the ball all that well. Um, and like 77 from 7,000 yards, tight course. That course is hard as hell. Like
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I think that course is harder than Emerald Valley.
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
like it's like hitting
Tough. Yeah.
you're hitting down hallways, man. And those greens are crazy sloped and they are fast.
Mm.
They were running 12s, man. I mean, everyone, they kept telling me like, don't be above the hole because
Yeah.
you're screwed. And like, they were not joking. So this actually leads me to, um, the one shot.
Ooh,
I teased this on my Instagram.
here
I
it
teased
is.
this you. But this is the greatest shot of my life, brought to you by the fine folks again at Adele. Hello. Because one shot makes the difference. And this one shot, I'm going to tell you right now, really did make a difference for me because it was I had shot 2 over on the front 9.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm playing well. I'm like, damn,
Yeah.
dude. Like I made a great par on 9 after a bad left miss that almost went out of bounds and like kind of chunked the iron, but it just happened to run up there. Um, this isn't the shot, but I'm just setting the stage. It happened to run up. It was like I was like 180 yards out into like a 15-mile-an-hour wind in the
Yeah.
deep rough. I like chunked the 4 out. It just happened to trundle on to the green, but I had a 45-foot putt. I lagged it to 4 feet, but it was like I needed to get it like 3 inches more and it was going to fall over the crest back towards the hole and I would have had a shorter putt. So I had
Yeah.
this 4-foot downhill putt. And then of course my opponent reminded me that putt, this putt is now worth $20 because we had like pressed the front.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I drained the 4-footer and everyone was like, oh my God, like, dude, this kid is on fire. Um, and so we get to 10 and tight par 4. I hit driver and I hit it right. I kind of flared. It wasn't a bad drive, but it's just like this
Yeah.
hole is so tight. Flared into the trees. Get in there. It is jail. Like it's just tree.
Yeah.
So I have a spot that I could punch out to the left that would put me at around probably 90 yards to the pin. There's about an 8-foot gap in front of me, maybe, 15 yards ahead of me. Fairly easy to do.
Sure.
But my playing partner was in the middle of the fairway and he had just like made 3 birdies. And I mean, dude was on fire. So he said, don't worry, I got you, partner. Do whatever
Yeah.
you think you want to do. And so I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, he's going to make par at worst. And our other the guys we were playing against weren't in great position. So I'm like, I know that's there. Let me see what else I got. So I look
Yeah.
and right in front of me is a hallway straight to the flag. But I have no more than a 6-foot gap
Yeah.
that is about 90 yards ahead of me. It's 130 yards to the pin, but I have this 6-foot gap that is 90 yards ahead of me. And the pin is like literally right in the middle of this gap. So I said, okay, I could probably try to chip a 6-iron.
Yeah.
And if it goes through that and lands in the rough, it could roll up to the front of the green. The pin was like back.
Yeah.
It could roll up to the front of the green. And even if it doesn't, I'm still like kind of chipping uphill. So I said, okay. And this ball is sitting on hard pan dirt. Not,
Yeah.
there's nothing there.
Sure.
I get up to it and I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to try it. I'm just like, I'm going to see the shot and do it. I hit this shot,
Mm-hmm.
pure it. I look up and this thing is flying 4 feet off the ground. Perfectly splits the gap between the trees, lands in the rough, it takes like 3 bounces and starts rolling. And it's rolling and it's rolling, it's rolling. And everyone is going like nuts. They're like,
Mhm.
holy shit. They're like, I cannot believe this. As it's happening, I cannot believe this. It's rolling, gets to the front of the green, rolls to 12 feet.
Yes.
12 feet. And like John, one of the guys, he's like, that is genuinely one of the greatest shots I've ever seen in my entire life. The guy, the Oregon Nam,
Yeah.
the previous Oregon Nam champ was like, that was that was an incredible shot. Like, I
Yeah.
cannot believe you just did that.
Yeah.
Will was so freaking pumped. Like, he was like, dude, he's like, that was insane.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
for like 3 holes, that's all we were talking about. I'm like, I hit that. I was like, that, and normally when
Yeah.
that kind of stuff happens, you're like, oh, I thinned it a little bit. I'm like, no, I caught
Nope.
this dead on the screws. I flighted this thing, somehow kept it 5 feet off the ground, hit this 6-foot gap down the middle on like a molecular level,
Mhm.
dropped it exactly where it needed to go in the rough to slow it enough to get it to roll.
Yeah.
And yeah, 12-foot putt. It unfortunately was downhill. I hit a really good putt, just burned the edge and then went by 5 feet, but I made the 5-foot, comebacker. So made par on a hole that like best shot I had was like bogey was like the best I could do. And like almost went bogey to birdie. Yeah. So that was just such an incredible feeling. But yeah, so like, but going back to the whole, that course management, I always thought I was really good. I'm like, dude, I don't take risks. I play very conservatively. I can't do that. I can't do any more than aim at center of greens. And it just reminded me like, dude, yes, you can. You can actually aim away from center of greens. You can aim at the spot where if you don't hit it perfectly, it ends up in a place that that you can make a very easy chip and make a par, because at the level of golf I'm playing at right now, pars are really, really good, and pars are going to be great.
Yeah.
And eventually I'm going to learn, eventually having the trust in my ability to make pars, I can pick my spots to be aggressive. And like, if, no, I'm feeling my swing. Hey, this 100-yard wedge, I don't have to try to be conservative here. I'm going to flag this sucker and I'm going to try to make a birdie.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do that every hole. You only have to do that maybe 3 times around, 4 times around, and you're shooting 68. Maybe.
Yeah.
So that was like a big, I feel like it was a big step forward for me in my game. Just like playing with Will and him being like, and he wasn't even telling me, hey, this is how you should play. He just kept telling me, dude, this is where you want to be. If it, this is where you'd like to miss.
Yeah.
And it just kept working out. And I was like, dude, I've never looked at a golf course like that ever. I've never thought like, this is where I should miss.
That's cool. That's very cool.
So that was big for me. That was my nerdy shit for the week. So
nice.
That's all I got.
Cool.
All right.
Well,
thanks everyone.
For the birdie-a-thon.
Yeah, sign for the birdie-a-thon. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us. Yeah, it was fun. Great episode.
I'm gonna go back to my whiteboard and do some more calculus.
Goodwill Hunting. Hey, follow us on Instagram at Mid-Am Podcast. You can follow me at Fade and Fairway. You can follow Nathan at Nathan.Firmasu and at Thistle Leather Goods. Please be sure to tap into our birdie-a-thon. I got one yesterday, so I'll text you about that later so we can add it to the tally.
I'll do an update.
Yeah, and we've all of those links will be in the show notes. And until next time, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.